Hello and welcome to the vlog from my garage. This is not supposed to be what the vlog is. Today is actually a gardening vlog, or we're gonna chat about the gardening vlog. I wanna start off when there's like not much growing. Things are starting to happen, but I'm about to go get my garbage can because we have 90-kilometer-an-hour winds today. My garbage can has blown down the street because it's garbage day today. There's my garbage can, I need to go get it. Hello everybody, welcome to today's video officially. It's very windy. We are experiencing 90 kilometers an hour wind gusts today, so I'm going to try and film this video. I hope it sounds okay. I've got my wind muff on and I'm going to try and stop talking through the big gusts so that hopefully you can hear me all right. You're going to hear a little bit of wind noise, but I did do a test film and it doesn't sound terrible, so please bear with me, otherwise I don't know when I was going to be able to film this for you guys. Today I want to talk to you about the garden. Last year I did not share enough about the garden. I want to share so much more this year, and I've talked about this a little bit before, but I think there was just part of me that was like, oh, nothing's really happening, or I'm not a professional gardener, so like why would people want to watch gardening things from me? But we've gotten over that, and I've had some realizations this year, and I'm going to film as much of these steps as possible, and there is stuff happening in the garden right now. So just to get started, this is the first video you're watching of mine. Hello, I'm Rainbow. I talk about all sorts of things on this channel. I do gardening, some urban homesteading, I bake a lot, talk about motherhood, I do cleaning things sometimes, homemaking bits, all sorts of things. Really, there's no cohesive rhyme or reason. I just film my life and things I'm passionate about. So sorry if you're looking for a very specific niche, you probably won't find it here. Okay, so I live in southern Alberta, Canada, which means that typically I am technically in zone 3B as far as like North American gardening zones go. However, my yard, as you can see, is completely south facing. So after doing some experiments last year with planting things at certain stages, planting things that I shouldn't be able to plant outside and that thrived, I'm realizing that I'm actually more of a zone 4 in my yard. So I'm kind of gardening differently in my area than what might be recommended. I especially found that to be true with a lot of my pots. So I have a big gardening bed. I have one bed that is 10 by 14 feet. We live in like the suburbs, and I'm putting in a second bed this year, which I'm really excited to share with you guys in a minute. I grow a lot in pots and a lot in grow bags as well. This year my goal is to try and grow as much food for our family as I can, and then preserve it and not let anything go to waste in the garden, essentially. And I really want to see how much I can preserve for our family to eat from things we grew. So we only moved here 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago. It will be 2 years in the fall. So we haven't been here long, and so last year we put the whole garden in. So there were things that I couldn't put in early enough, like onions and my carrots and garlic and things like that. So this is year 2 with this garden, and it's like gardening in a whole new world because, again, I have a completely south-facing backyard, and we're kind of built in the middle of a farmer's field. Our neighborhood is still being developed, so we just get so much sun. Like, there's just not a lot of blockage from mature trees or a ton of other houses, and our yard is in full sun from morning till evening, and it is awesome because it just means I can grow so much in this yard, which is so great. We have one strip of shade in our front, even though it's north facing, it gets quite a bit of sun, like more than I thought. So today I want to show you what is growing in my garden already, what's coming back from last year, what I have already planted. I planted some things I directly sowed into my garden on March 20th, which is probably about 2 months before our last frost date here. We have a very short growing season here in zone 3. We go from about mid to end May until September. So we don't get a lot. You have to be careful with your planting, you have to be strategic, and if it doesn't work out, you basically try again next year. So I feel like there's not a whole lot of gardening videos for this zone and this area, so I just wanted to share my experience and share with you guys what's going on before the gardening beds are cleaned up, before things are really going. So I've done a little bit of a clean, but like I do leave some things kind of dead looking for the pollinators and for the bugs. Let me show you what everything looks like right now. And you can go back and look at my gardening playlist if you want to see the garden when it was like fully going last summer. So this is my 10 by 14 foot gardening bed. If you see any bits, it's just because, again, the wind is really bad, and because we don't really have a lot of other houses blocking, we just get stuff blown in. So we're gonna have to do yard cleanup after. But this is actually a really, really huge bed. I've got blueberries tucked back there, and I have more growing space back here that something failed last year and I'm going to replant. I have some bags, and then my whole porch is full of pots. So let me show you guys what is currently in the garden still, what will come back, and what is growing. I just used little wood skewer things for marking things last year, so I'm going to compost these and do new ones. So these are my strawberries, and they are already coming back. They look really messy, but that is intentional. Because it dips so cold here at night, I have not weeded my whole garden either, so please forgive that. But because it dips so cold, the dead stuff on top is protecting the new growth on the bottom, and so it's actually able to start thriving again. This one's doing really well over here in the corner. There are clearly some I'm going to have to replace. One died last year. I'm definitely going to have to replace some. And last year I had tomatoes in there. I am not going to grow tomatoes in my garden in the main bed this year. I will be growing tomatoes, and I'll explain that later. But I'm going to just put more strawberries all the way to the back. Some of these might still come back, so I need to wait a little longer to see what's actually dead, and then I will just replace what died. Because it is so hot here in the summer, we do have to be careful since my garden is south facing. Some things do get scorched, and so I have to be very meticulous with what I plant, where I plant it. Right here we've got a big garlic that's just like pushed itself up, so I'm just going to pop this back down. Go back, wee garlic. Chill out there. I'm starting to see things volunteer in the garden. I don't know exactly what is going to pop up where, so we're going to have to be mindful of that, and I'm kind of going to let my garden grow a little bit wild before I start doing heavy weeding and pruning. If you are unaware of what a volunteer plant is, I don't think it's super common in some other areas of the world. I first heard the term from a gardening video, I think, a couple years ago, and maybe it's just like a southern kind of term, but I love it, and it's the perfect definition for what a volunteer plant is, which is something that seeds itself in the fall or in the late summer and will come back on its own. It will volunteer to come back without you having to plant it. So you can actually get a lot of volunteer plants in the summer, so I'm curious to see what volunteers. So in this plot right here and right here, we have all of the garlic and we have all of the onion, and as you can see, my onions are starting to come up, which is awesome. I do have some weeding to do, as you can see, but I'll come in here and do like really dig these out because they don't always come out all the way. No, I just lost that. Okay, but all of my onions are starting to come up, and my garlic is starting to poke up too. Can you see? Little baby garlics. So I don't know how it is in your zone. Maybe you can, like, we can plant nothing in the winter here. We get minus 40 in the winter for like months on end, so everything, it's very rare that you can even plant stuff in the spring, because right now it is what, April 5th I think today, and we will be getting down to like minus 7 degrees Celsius, or a little bit colder still before our final frost date. However, I know a lot of people say, oh, you can't plant anything until that last frost date, and it's just not true, especially if you have a really sunny spot to plant your veggies in. So onions and garlic, you need to plant them when it's cold, the minute the soil is workable. So for us, that was in March. I probably could have planted these at the end of February this year actually, but I waited because I couldn't find any. I was completely out of onion bulbs, and I couldn't find any in the stores until mid to end March. So I planted all of these on March 20th with Mackenzie, my daughter. She is my gardening buddy. My son sometimes helps, but like my daughter is the one that's invested in the garden. Last year we had to build this bed from scratch. There was nothing here before. This grass was just dead in this part of the yard because it gets so much sun. So I also did not fill this bed as far as I could because I know that I'm going to start filling it each year and adding more compost and adding more dirt. So if you want to know how I built this garden, I can let you guys know, but I'll also be showing you how I'm going to build a second bed. So I'm assuming we're probably going to do a very similar setup to what we did with this bed. So that's why you can see like it's not full to the top because this is already probably 8 inches of good quality dirt. And then it's going straight into the natural soil, which this was a cornfield before, so it's not terrible, which means the plants can grow in good soil and their root systems can travel down to the less desirable soil down below. But I don't plant any like really heavy rooted crops. I don't put potatoes in my garden. I grow my potatoes in grow bags, things like that. All things I will be showing you and talking to you guys about this year. But anyway, if you guys have not, if you are in a similar zone to me, and you haven't put your onions in or garlic in and you want to, it's still okay to do it. You might be okay. Last year I was still building the garden. I didn't have the garden fully built until May. It took a while to get it done. So I wasn't able to plant my garlic or my onions early enough. And so I really didn't get very much of a harvest. I got some onions. I got no garlic. So I'm really hopeful that them already coming up and thriving will mean that I have a more successful garlic and onion year. You'll notice that the garden is very dry. That's because I haven't really had to water it yet, but today I'm going to do its first good water. And then we're going to have really hot temperatures this week, and then I'm going to tarp it because we're dipping down really cold again. And I'm going to basically create a greenhouse effect over the whole garden this year, or for this next week. And then hopefully after that the weather will turn and it will be more spring-like. This is probably going to be really windy, but I just wanted to show you guys that I do have stuff coming up. Very basic stuff that is cold hardy, like chives. My chives are really starting to come up. And it's funny, we have some chives popping up down here by my chamomile. So my chive row goes all the way into my chamomile because chamomile will get really big. I plant my kale beside it because the scent of the chamomile will help deter the cabbage moths that like to get at the kale. We'll see if my chamomile wants to come back. It was coming back and then it got cold again and it died back down, which is why I've left all of this to keep it covered. So hopefully, but I do have some chives coming up this year. There were no chives here last year, so that is interesting. Hopefully they kind of fill out this. Otherwise I'm going to like take some of them and move them down. But we've got some green in the garden already here in zone 3. We did have some kale coming back up, but I'm probably gonna like rip those out. That's why I left those little stumpy bits, because we did have some kale coming. But I've got kale growing in the house, so we will see. All right, I'm kind of hiding over here because the wind is coming from the front and my fence cannot stay closed right now. It's just like whipping it open. Okay, the other thing that I already planted from seed in the garden this year was my carrots. The reason I did that was because my carrots were okay last year. I moved them from their spot. They were over here where it does get a tiny bit of shade. And so what I did was I planted my spinach and my lettuce all over there because they bolted so fast on me because it's so hot in this garden. So I put them kind of in the shadier spot, and I already planted them because they are cold hardy as well. They will come up when they're ready. And hopefully I'll have success. But if that shady spot is difficult to work with, the good thing about kale and spinach is I can reseed and retry several times. They come up very fast, and there's a huge grace period with those two, like tender lettuce type plants. So they're really, really easy to grow. Like anybody can grow lettuce. But I'm hoping that moving them to a shadier spot will be more helpful, because last year my lettuce was where my carrots is right now, and they did okay, but the ones that didn't bolt were actually covered by my huge zucchini plants. So I'm hopeful. I put carrots here, and in this entire row right here. I'm hoping they like this spot better, and I direct sowed them in March because I found that the carrots I direct sowed earlier did far better than the ones I did after the last frost date. I might have to redo the carrots. I'm just kind of experimenting. You never know with carrots. Usually they are grown best under a board, but I'm just gonna see. I just planted them just to experiment. I'm still experimenting in this garden, and that's okay. But I was out here this morning and I noticed that I already have carrot babies coming up, so that's really exciting. You can see. Can you see that? Got lots of little sprouts if you look really closely popping up. So I'm gonna give the garden a good water right now, and then we'll see what decides to come up. It is getting more dry. We were getting a little bit of snow and a little bit of rain. I don't like to water the garden too heavily in the spring because we do get a lot of moisture with the temperature changes, and I don't want to encourage too much to start growing before it's time. Some stuff needs to stay dormant for a little longer, but now the garden is dry and it needs water, and I have the seeds in, and we're not getting rain for a couple of days, so it is time to water. And then hopefully after I tarp the whole thing, I will really have seeds starting to pop out from that greenhouse effect. So although I still have more to show you, you can see that a lot happens in the garden. Even though everything kind of looks dead still, there's lots happening underneath. I just wanted to show you my grow bags. So I'm getting much more of these. I grew my potatoes in grow bags all year last year, and they were great. I loved it. I just put out a big tarp, dumped these bags out, and got lots of potatoes. So I'm buying a lot more grow bags, and I'm doing all my tomatoes and potatoes in grow bags this year just because it's easier for me. I learned last year that I just prefer not to have my tomatoes in my garden bed. I can control things easier. I can stake them easier. I can just prevent tomato diseases a lot easier in grow bags. And if the weather gets really weird, I can move them around, which is helpful to me. So there's actually a lot of plants happening in the garden. I'm going to show you where we're putting our other bed. I'm just going to show you from a distance because it's kind of gross. So that's where our dog's poop spot is. They are trained to like go in one spot of the yard, but it's the exact same sun exposure as this garden bed, just on a smaller scale. So we're going to put a second bed in there. We're going to tear up all the grass so it's not gross, and again, replace all the dirt. And then we'll move their spot to something else, to a different place in the yard. But after coming up with so many ideas, this was the most logical place to put another gardening bed. So I'm going to show you the size. I'm just going to censor some poopies. This whole section over here is going to be another gardening bed. That's my sad rose bush. As you can see, I have a lot of big pots and lots and lots of pots up here. Windy out there, so I decided to move inside for a second because I mostly showed you what I wanted to show you. I'm going to be sharing putting the new gardening beds in, planting like the big plant that we do in May when I put all of my seedlings out. I will show you guys all of that. If you have any questions, you want me to show something specific that maybe I'm not thinking would be helpful to see, let me know and I will. So as you can see, I have so many pots, and I planted my pots in March with my other stuff that I direct sowed in the garden already right away. And there is a very specific reason I did that. A lot of people will not plant things in pots yet because it is quite early. But again, I swear my yard is in a different gardening zone because we get so much sun. It's so hot. Like, it will be too cold to go for a walk where I live, but I can sit on my deck in a t-shirt with my coffee and get a suntan. It's crazy. So I did an experiment last year where I planted a bunch of wildflowers, and I did that to bring in pollinators from my garden because I knew they would bloom first and they would attract the bees and the butterflies to help pollinate my garden. It worked beautifully, but I wanted to experiment because I had never grown anything in this space with this, with a yard facing this direction. It was our first garden in this house. So what I did was I planted one planter of wildflowers in March, and I planted 2 planters of wildflowers and other flowers after our last frost day in May. And everything I planted in March bloomed beautifully. It was huge. The pots were bursting. I had so many wildflowers all summer long. They reseeded and like continued to grow. Everything I planted in May in my pots was stubby and sad, and it never grew past like this high. So I took that as a cue to completely plant every single one of my planters this year. And in my planters is where I keep all my flowers. I have another bed in the front yard, and I will probably be adding a little bit more to that too. And that is both for looks, but everything that looks nice has a purpose. If you guys follow me on Instagram, I shared a bunch of herbs and flowers that look pretty but are medicinal, or you can eat them. And that's kind of what my front garden is, and around my trees. So I have 2 little tiny trees. We're in a new build, so they're like still little. I'm probably gonna, I've dug out around the one to create a little garden bed. I'm probably gonna widen that a little bit, and I'm gonna make another one in the front. And around my trees, I do chamomile and calendula. Last year I did wildflowers, and I just let them go really wild. I kind of like the look of a cottage garden. So in my pots are all flowers that have use to me, or some are just pretty kind of sentimental value that I used to make some bouquets for the house and things like that. But a lot of this is useful for the apothecary, and that is why I planted a lot of those. So out there in the pots, I did all my chamomile and all my calendula around the trees. I have calendula and chamomile and echinacea started in the house because my front is colder, and so I'll start those in the house, and those will transplant out to the front. I seed started all the ones in the back because it's hotter in the back. In my pots, I've got things like wildflowers, because they grow beautifully. They're like native to our area. So make sure if you're going to plant wildflowers, just make sure you are not planting invasive species. Make sure you get them from a local place so that you are buying local flowers to your area. I planted forget-me-nots and baby's breath just for fun. But we're going to have pots of lavender, calendula, I think echinacea, basically the plan I have is all those plants are going to go in the front once they've become established on the back deck. And I'm going to create this kind of look on my front porch that's very cottage garden-y, very full, very like bustling and kind of wild looking, but still order and contained. And I'm going to do that by using a lot of pots at different levels and layers. So I just have tons and tons of pots. I'll probably plant more. And I'm really excited to play around with that because I have quite a big front porch and I want to make it look nice out there. We have a lot of cement space, so I want to just kind of make it look a little more natural. These are all the seeds I started inside this year, which is not a lot because I direct sowed a lot of things. I need to water these. They're a little bit sad. Some things are getting a little bit laggy because they came up very quickly. I'll share a tip with you guys. Today I'm going to be putting a fan out and having the fan blow on these, and that will essentially give like a false version of hardening off the seedlings. So the fan will blow and they will strengthen the stalks and the stems and the root system of these little plants. And it will make it so that when we, like, as you can see, it's very windy here. So when I start hardening them off, I won't lose as many seedlings. But it's not time to harden them off yet. I personally don't harden off my plants until about a week, maybe 2, before I'm going to put them in the ground, which isn't for probably about 4.5 weeks still. So we've got a long ways to go. So I've got kale started because I do have kale in the garden and that wanted to kind of come back, and I was like, I've got way more than I need. I started some of my herbs like basil and sage because I'm not confident all of them are going to come back. I lost a couple of sage bushes, so I'm going to plant more. So I planted more so I could replace them. I've got my tomatoes started in here. My peppers are just starting to come up. Like, this is the first seedling I've seen of peppers. Peppers are late. I didn't have any success with peppers last year because I put my zucchini in the big bed and it took over. Well, it didn't take over, it just got huge. We had so many zucchini. So I'm putting zucchini in the second bed, which is really why I needed a second bed, was to put zucchini and a couple of other things in there. And I companion plant my entire garden. So I can talk to you guys more about companion planting in future videos, but there's a lot of herbs and things like that, and whatever I don't need, I will just give away or sell on the local gardening pages or give to friends who are also gardening. So just lots of little things, like tons of chamomile, because if my chamomile should come back, there should be no issue with that, but just in case it doesn't, I want to have chamomile sooner than later because I use a ton of chamomile in the apothecary. And so I've got chamomile coming up and being planted, and I also planted chamomile in pots, I'm pretty sure. But I have 3 separate entire areas where I will be growing chamomile, so I will be harvesting chamomile like every morning for the entire summer. Okay, so I'm gonna go water these. I'm gonna set up the fan. I'm gonna go water my garden, and I hope this was helpful or interesting or informative. If you really don't like gardening stuff, I'm sorry, but I'm gonna talk about it because I am passionate about gardening. I love gardening, and it's just part of my life. It's a huge part of my life for like many months of the summer. So I hope you guys enjoy gardening content. I really hope that I can help some of you who are beginner gardeners or maybe gardening in a different zone. Again, there's not a lot of gardening content in my specific zone, so I wanted to maybe try and provide some sort of insight to what it's like to garden in zone 3 up in Canada. So I hope you find these gardening videos helpful, but I've been talking at you for a very long time, so we'll see you in my next one. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know if there's anything you guys want me to tackle this spring. If you guys want me to talk about things that I'm putting in before I put them in, please tell me so that I can. Sometimes I don't always think that something would be helpful to hear, but if it's something that needs to happen in the springtime, please tell me so I have time to film that video for you. But yeah, let me know if you guys have any questions. I do little gardening tips on my Instagram reels. I started doing that, so if you ever have any little small topics you want me to tackle, just let me know and I'll put a reel together answering your question. But until the next one, we will see you guys later. Thanks for watching. Bye.